Hello, everybody. We don't have a name for this yet, but my name is Seamus,
I'm Andrew.
and we are fucking two guys who are going to talk about some audio and music. Andrew, why don't you start us off?
Sure.
What got you into music production?
Oh man. I guess it was kind of with you, man. You produced my first EP, and it came back
Yeah, back in
great, and it was
college.
pretty exhilarating to hear that those songs turned into that. But it was also kind of like a financial cost and like just general points of interest that made me kind of want to start recording myself, and kind of like actually learning what the things are, like EQ, compression, and how that stuff works in there.
I remember you were stressing about the cost of it back then.
Yeah.
I do remember those discussions happening, and I'm just happy to see where you've gotten to now, where you're just like killer at it. Honestly,
Right
You're
on,
really
man. Thank
starting
you.
to blow me away, which is really cool.
Yeah, dude. Same to you, man. You've definitely evolved through that through the years.
Well, it's hard, right? It's hard to tell how much better you've gotten. But so, what kind of music do you play?
At my heart, dude, at my core, I really like deathcore, metalcore. I guess like new metal, I suppose. Bands like Alpha Wolf, Dealer, then down to like Humanity's Last Breath. Lately, I've been trying to kind of branch out. I mean, in mixing, I'll put my hands on anything I can get, really. But as far as like writing and playing, man, I've been moving into like pop punky kind of music, like I guess like surfy, like we were talking about previously, like surf
Yeah.
rock kind of music. Just to kind of like keep myself motivated and inspired, and to get past any like weird roadblocks that could come up. That's a
Yeah,
good way to like free
I've
yourself.
I've heard some of the stuff you made recently where it almost sounded like, and don't take this the wrong way, it sounded like generic like 80s rock music that would be in
Yeah.
like the soundtrack of like a high school, movie about like teenagers or something like
Yeah,
that.
totally,
Back in the day,
totally.
which I think is kind of cool. That's a cool evolution for you.
Thanks, man.
Excuse me, I'm gonna take a sip of my water.
It's super refreshing, man. Water and new
Yeah,
music.
it's nice to branch out. Certainly, it's nice to do different things. It gets really boring doing the same thing over and over again.
Absolutely, dude.
Uh,
How about
so I
yourself,
guess
man?
I'll quickly. Yeah, sure. Why not? Fuck it. We'll talk about me now.
Yeah.
Um, um, why did I get into recording? When I was younger, I was playing in a black metal band, and we went to this local guy named Doug to record our music. I can't remember if we paid him $100 or not. He might have even done it for free, which is like, oh God, thinking about that now. But he did it, and we weren't really happy with it for some reason. In hindsight, he actually did a pretty fucking good job. Like he came to our basement and he brought his entire setup with him and just recorded everything on site, right?
Wow.
And he made things sound pretty good, but I don't know. At the time, we were real like, this isn't all the way there. I think it was like so little. Like we could have just asked him, like, hey, can you turn the toms up a little bit? And then we would have been cool with it because there was like a really tom centric part.
Totally.
But anyway, I kind of got it stuck in my head that maybe I could do better than he did, and here we are almost 10 years later. It took me quite a while to be able to do something as good as what he did.
No kidding. Was he pretty like
was
subpar at the time, or like good at what he was doing?
No, he was pretty damn good.
Oh, okay.
He was pretty damn good, and I was very cocky, like most people are when they start this.
Totally.
So,
Hey, you've made strides, man. Absolutely.
thanks, man.
Yeah, dude.
So, I guess types of music that I play. I started out playing like metal and hardcore. I played a lot of that. Kind of been venturing back into it lately, which has been fun. But over the last couple of years, I've done, a lot more electronic. I've made beats for rappers. I do like vaporwave.
Yeah. I've heard some of your vaporwave stuff, dude. It's great.
Thank you, man. Appreciate
Of course.
it. Yeah. That project is called Dream Gliding. We're gonna link the projects we talk about if we can remember it. Yeah, and then I play mostly clean guitar now, like emo and post punk and shoegaze and stuff like that. So things have changed quite a lot for me. But we both do kind of have those roots in like hardcore and
Totally.
metal.
Totally.
I think that's where you and I connect very well. And there's something very cool about hardcore and metal productions. Is there, with other things you need to show like restraint, but with metal and hardcore, it's almost cool when you do like too much of something.
Yeah.
It's like really exciting. Like just go ahead and crank the high end on the snare, fucking like 14 dB. you're not gonna get arrested. You'll
Very
be fine.
experimental, man. You made a comment
Yeah,
the
it's
other day about a technique that someone was doing, and you're like, man, it makes me feel like I'm breaking all the rules, but when I do it, it sounds
yeah,
great, or like it just seems like a fun way to
yeah,
process.
yeah. So it is. That's I guess why I like metal production so much is it's just very very intensive, and um, most of my clientele over the last year has been metal as well. So I've been having a really good time just making things intense. All 100%, 100% of the time.
Totally. It feels
Um,
great too, man. Getting like a dense, like really energetic, like great balance.
Dude,
I
yeah,
mean,
it's so good.
it hits hard. It hits different than other productions
There's
do.
there's plenty of music that's dynamic, but I've heard I forget exactly what it is. It might have been Jack Joseph Puig. I forget how to say his name, but he was saying how rock music is basically like it's like a sound. It's that wall of sound, and
Mm,
that's like it. You don't have
totally.
to have tons of dynamics as long as you get that sound there.
Yes. Yes, I believe
And
it.
that's exciting. I don't know. It's just big. It kind of like shakes you in your chest. You're like, holy fuck, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yes. And some of this music, it's not very melodic in any way. It's very like just dirty and aggressive,
Yeah,
So I feel like that opens up I don't know, areas in which you can experiment with different distortions and just, I don't know, push your limits a little bit. Do those things that
yeah,
feel like you're breaking the rules.
yeah. So, how long after you started recording yourself did you get other people in to record? What was that process like finding your first client?
Well, I don't know if you would consider him my first client. It was like buddy to buddy kind of thing. And I wanted to bring him in to
Yeah.
start recording. And I guess the session was actually when we were recording the Among the Seeking album. I tried to do my own mixing and everything for that. But like looking forward past that, like client work. Um, oh man, it's hard for me to draw this one for some reason. I can't remember. Who was I recording? My buddy Doug is who I was recording on our Diabolus album. It's
Hmm.
probably like the closest thing to, I don't know. It's hard for me to like think of these clients that I've done because I didn't start getting paying clients probably till 2 years ago. And it was like really
Really?
small
Wow.
projects. Yeah. It was like rappers on beats, which I guess was just of
Oh
a
yeah.
nightmare of, just starting recording my buddy Doug. It was kind of the same thing. I wasn't very familiar with what I was doing.
Yeah, you're gonna get tons of rappers along the way. It's easy money, but it's also it can be frustrating, right? Like they bring you like an MP3 from YouTube, and it's like a
Totally.
super dense mix, and you're somehow supposed to fit a vocal on top
Yeah.
of
It's
it.
all mastered
Yeah,
already, already
yeah, it's
super
all just
loud.
fucking super squashed. It's like you look at the waveform, it's like a fucking brick. It's just
Totally.
all dark. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, on my first project, my first paying project was my friend Nicholas Lawler. He was like my first client,
Okay.
and I don't know. Working up to that was kind of just me spreading myself around as much as I could on social media. I joined some like SoundCloud rapper groups because I thought that was like super feasible. There just seems like a dense market for it, so I wanted to get myself in somewhere and get my name built somewhere. It turns out to find out that those SoundCloud groups are like super dead pages.
Oh
But
yeah.
kind of like through that, like promoting on Facebook, I found some dude in Klamath Falls, which is where I lived, on Facebook. He added me and we started working together. And yeah, that's kind of the roundabouts of how I got my first client. He found me through some of my death metal stuff. And I guess he had paid like, I don't remember the name of this guy, but he paid some guy like $800 for a song. And it came back to him and it was like total booty hole. And he sent it to me and it was like his voice was all messed up, like super thin, no body or nothing.
Ah,
He's like, I
awful.
heard what you do with metal vocals, so I feel like you'd be able to do what I'm doing pretty well. And I did a demo mix for him and sent it back. And from there, it's been history. Now it's coming up on 3 years, I think. Sometime this summer, we've been working together.
And when did you go full time?
Full time. I went full time 4 months ago, 5 months ago.
Wow, so it's pretty recent.
Very
That's
fresh.
awesome.
Yeah. It's
Awesome,
been a lot
man.
of progression, I feel like. And just the quality of my mixing kind of left me feeling a little more confident moving forward into the full time
Yeah,
thing.
you should be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a weird like line. It's hard, like you were saying before, it's hard to like tell how good you've gotten. I feel like there's that line of comparing yourself positively and negatively,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about imposter syndrome, right? I
yeah,
mean, that's
it's very real.
that's a huge thing that happens with this is you just feel like you're not good enough because you're constantly comparing yourself to your idols who have been doing it for
Absolutely.
like 20 years, right?
Yeah,
They have just all the gear and all the clients. They're getting professional musicians flying in from another country to come work with them. It's easy to lose perspective.
really is, man.
Yeah, very very tough. I mean, And it's like your brain tricks you. Like I'll listen to an old mix of mine, and then I'll listen to something I did this year, and my brain like won't let me notice the differences most of the time.
Super
It'll
weird.
just be like in fact, my brain likes to default to like, here's my old mixes. There's a quality about them that I liked, but then it ignores all the parts of it that are bad. Like, okay, the low end's out of fucking control. The snare makes the speakers like bump in not a good way. It's like
Totally
pushing the cone of the speakers. Just things like that. Yeah, man.
super easy to nitpick yourself like that, because you went through
Extremely.
most of those, even though you might not know the exact things that you did in that mix. I feel like there's still something that like you obviously pull out that negative quality from something. Considering you're the producer, you're probably the worst critic to be there.
Yeah. Well, I think there is a little bit of a good argument for, going back to your old mixes and
Yeah.
revisiting them. And if there's qualities that you liked about them, figure out what you did. Because for me, I noticed that I try so many new things all the time that sometimes I actually stop doing techniques that were already working just because I kind of get bored of them.
Yeah.
So it's good to revisit and be like, oh, I used, an 1176 on that. Like, or I used, like JST clip or something. I soft clipped that. Like, shit,
Totally.
that sounds really good.
Yeah.
I'll just stop doing that stuff occasionally.
Yep.
I don't know why.
It's hard to tell yourself, like, once you have something that works, to like stick with it, because you get kind of stagnant with what you're doing. It almost feels like every mix sounds the same, even though they kind of don't. Just that same process over and over is kind of like, oh God, like, let me do something different. Like, let's experiment, get out of the box.
I think experimenting every mix is really, really healthy.
It is.
I think it keeps you from just like, because like, sure, experiments might not always pan out, right? But when they do, it makes you a much more well-rounded engineer.
Of course.
I think. But that's another topic. We have that written down somewhere else. Let's try to stay on track today. It's going to be tough.
Totally.
It's the first time, but we'll do our best.
So how about your first project? Your first, I guess, client of any sort.
So I was playing in a metalcore band at the time. We were not that good, honestly, in hindsight. But, we had a good drummer, and that helped, and I was a solid rhythm player, so it kind of carried it. We sounded decent. Back then, we were just playing, dinky little shows at,
Totally.
Little dive bars, and it was always like, pre-sale shows, and nobody who was on the show would ever reach the pre-sale, thing. We would always fall like, because Baltimore is such a small hardcore scene that, you're all trying to pull from the same group of people. It's really competitive, which I always thought music would be competitive when I started out, because I grew up playing sports, so it was always like, I'm better than you, fuck you,
totally.
I can do better. But as I've gotten older, I've really shied away from that. I like just making friends and collaborating and working with other people, and I think that's a much better approach to it, because it's art. It's not a competition.
It's very true,
Obviously,
man.
some people are going to be, on the top of the stack, and some people are going to be on the bottom. But like, I don't think that has anything to do with, I don't think that really has a relation to how good your art is. There's no real relation there.
No.
I think we all have artists that we love that get almost no recognition. Sometimes it's like, maybe they don't have the look, maybe their marketing's bad, but that doesn't mean their art's bad.
Yeah. I feel like when it comes to that, the person you should be competitive against is most likely yourself, trying to be like a better version of yourself than you were.
That's a very good point. Yeah. But first project. So we played around town. We made a couple of friends. There was this one band, Cathedrals, that now a lot of the guys are in a band called Deep Rest, which is kind of like a fairly well-known local hardcore band here.
Okay.
Really good, by the way. Definitely people should check them out. But Cathedrals was like a melodic hardcore band, and I had recorded, some of my own projects at the time. I'd put out 2 releases with my band, 1 EP.
Was that what Relapse Collapse? Was that when you were with
Relapse
them?
Collapse.
Oh,
Yep.
dope. Okay.
So we put out a couple releases together that were, self-done, and the first time it took me so long to get the first EP out. The album didn't take quite as long. And eventually, I think Cathedrals heard my recordings, and they're like, hey, we like your stuff. Let's come record. So they came over to my house, and I ended up I set their drum set up, in my living room.
No kidding.
Or not my in our basement or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I had like 6 SM57s or something, and I just mic'd up all the shells, and I used XY for the overheads.
Wicked cool.
It's just complete, like, absolutely thrown together. Just but they ended up liking it. They really enjoyed what I did to it. So it was pretty rewarding.
I would like to hear that, dude. Definitely. I don't think I've heard that
Yeah,
yet. I know you've
I
talked
think
about it with me before, but
well, it never got released. There was
oh, okay.
some weirdness that happened with the band where um, I feel like I can talk about this because they're all friends now, and I like those guys. I feel like we're all cool now, but um, they were like their drummer. I think they kicked their drummer out, or their drummer left, or something, and um, the dispute came up of don't use my parts on the album.
Oh
And I was
man.
so young. I was so young. I didn't really know how to deal with it. But I tried to be, pretty level headed. I was like,
Yeah.
well, look, guys, the album's pretty much done being mixed. I've put in all this work. Why don't you just talk to Paul and, try to work it out? And if you guys can work it out, then cool. And we'll just keep the drum parts on the album. It sounds really good.
Totally.
And they were like, just replace it with programmed. And my head was spinning. I didn't know a good way to vocalize it. Like, that's going to take a lot of
Oh
time.
god, yeah.
In hindsight, I probably should have just been like, guys, give me another like $200 or whatever. I'll do my best. $300, whatever it was at the time. I wasn't charging a lot. I think
Yeah.
100 a song. I should have done something like that, but I didn't. And then the project kind of ended up falling apart. Like they just, it
Slowly
just didn't go
trickled out.
anywhere. Yeah, they just kind of got it in their heads that I wasn't like siding with them, which I mean really wasn't the case. But we're all kids,
Yeah.
We're all
Yeah.
hotheads, and I'm sure they were just as passionate about their music as I was about mine.
Totally, dude.
Um,
Totally.
I don't want this in any way to be misconstrued as me talking shit. I really like those guys. I think they're really, really cool, and I think they're good musicians. Deep Rest is very good. You guys should check them out.
Do they have stuff that's out? Is it
Yeah, Deep Rest
Okay.
is good. Yeah,
Okay,
I'll
cool.
send that stuff to you.
amazing?
Yeah. But I learned a lot from that project. Before we start going into the stuff we learned from your first project, why don't you talk to me about your recording setup for your first project? What was that like?
My recording setup on my first project, I had
Yeah,
a
your first
line
paid
set-
first paid project.
first
yeah.
paid project. I had
Yeah.
Audacity, the free DAW that you like can't split or move or do anything in real time on.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you used Audacity for a paid project?
Yeah.
You're a brave
Booty
man.
hole. I mean, dude, I started it. I think it was like 10 or 20 bucks. Like it was dirt cheap. But I was just like trying to do stuff with like people that I kind of knew, and it was with that guy Nick, and I kind of knew him because we had like a mutual because we both lived there for a while. I had my Pod Farm, Line 6 Pod Farm UX1, and I don't even know what kind of microphone I had. I think it was like a DR100, like a super cheap off-brand 57, and you could get two for like $10. And I just threw it together onto a stand, and we recorded in and exported out. And then he took the tracks home and like, I guess, quote unquote, mixed them, produced them.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of it. That was like the first thing we did together. And then after that, I got, of course, like a 2i2, kept the same mics, and then I started mixing him myself and started kind of doing my own thing.
But it is great, as soon as people put money in your hand for this stuff, it like sparks something into you. You're like, holy shit, I can do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Like people are willing to pay me for this.
Totally.
It's kind of like an aha moment, Like for me, I was struggling when I was younger. Like, how do I wasn't good at anything else,
Mm-hmm.
Like, or I just didn't have the drive for anything else is maybe a better way to put that. But like, I don't know about you, but for me, like I bounced around jobs a lot in my late teens, early 20s, just a lot. Cause I just couldn't take it, man. But music was the thing I was best at. And I was struggling, how can I make a living off of music? We all grow up thinking, oh, I'm just going to play in a band. I'll just be in a band. I'll tour. It'll be great. And that's changed so much now. There's not really as much money in that as there used to be because there's CDs aren't being sold anymore. People are streaming music, which whole other fucking topic, right?
Yeah.
But I just remember, I was on I think Chango forums, the Chango Studio forums.
Love it.
Which I think is actually where I met you.
Is it?
I think you just posted like, "Hey, I need somebody to record my band," and I posted on
that's dope.
on the
Okay.
status, and you ended up hitting me up.
Cool.
And,
cool.
Yeah. And I remember being on there, and some guy was like, "Hey, I need a ghostwriter for a part." I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." And he's like, "How much?" I was like, $15 or something.
Oh man.
And I did it in like 30 minutes. And it was so rinky dink, right? I played the part. I I pitched it down to A, even though it was
Oh,
in like drop
beautiful.
C.
Nice.
Yeah, using Pod Farm, and it sounded like total shit. But like, I wrote the part, he paid it, he said he liked the part, and he ended up sending it back to me after he put it in his production. And it sounded good. He was actually a pretty good producer. So,
Cool.
that was like, oh shit, like,
I did
you know, I
something
get a couple
right.
of these. I get a couple of these a month. You know, I'm starting to make a little bit of money here because I was working 3 days a week or some shit. Right?
Yeah.
I was like 17, 18. So I immediately went to my job and I told them I was going to work one less day a week. And
Dope.
my parents were so not happy with me.
I feel like most
they were
parents
freaking
wouldn't
out.
be, dude. Totally.
Oh, dude, they were like, "This is yeah." But you know, I had the money. I was like, I got paid money.
Yeah.
I know I can do this, and I think I was, you know, a little quick to jump to that. But
Super exciting
it was
feeling,
exciting.
though.
It was exciting. That was the light bulb that went off in my
Yep.
head. Like, oh, I can do this, and it still gives me the joy of playing music, but you know, it's much more easily monetizable, whatever you want to say, whatever that word
Yeah.
would be. It's easier for people to it's easier to get money.
Yeah. It's
Honestly,
so much
I mean,
funner.
how many shows have you played where you're playing for like, you know, you drive like an hour to go to the show and then you play like a 15-minute set, you sell a bunch of pre-sales and then fucking you get like $20 at the end of the day.
If that,
Like,
dude.
yeah, like that's so not sustainable.
We made such a small amount of money, dude.
Yeah.
We toured for like, quote unquote, toured for like 3 days. I don't think we came out with like any profits. It all went to like gas.
Yeah.
We were hauling like 6 people around with us on the way back. You know, we got in a wreck and had to drive back in a Ford Fiesta, all 6 of us.
Oh god.
Everything gas, place to stay. We were broke, dude. But it was fun.
Yeah.
And that's really what it took for me to realize, like, I would rather try and put myself in a position where I'm not having to live that lifestyle. Because, you know, you think of these big tours, it's got to be pretty expensive, you know, as an independent musician. And
Yeah, super expensive.
very little amounts of profit. That's what was the motivator there. It's like, I really don't want to do this. This is difficult.
I know one person who has profited off of their first tour, and it was a band that already had a pretty good following. They're a tech death band, so very talented players.
Okay.
And the only reason I think they did well is because they got on a tour with a pretty decent sized name, and they had merch and CDs, and like I think they came out with like, you know, $4,000 in their pockets.
Wow.
Which was really cool
That's
for them.
great, dude.
Yeah, but like, you know, what are the odds, right? They definitely did it the right way though. Like they went in prepared. They had merch and
Yeah.
they had media, right?
Who was it? Who's the
I think-
band?
It was this band Perihelion from around here,
Oh,
and
I'm not too
I know
sure.
the guitarists from that have gone on to be in a band called like Noises and Wormhole, and
Cool.
they're really really good guitarists. Yeah, and the bassist used to play with me in my band for a little bit.
Oh, wow. That's dope.
Yeah, really really cool guys. I know we're getting sidetracked here. So what were we saying? But yeah, that aha moment when you start recording, that's really cool, man. It really lights a spark under your ass, you know.
Yeah, it's a motivator,
And it makes-
definitely.
Yeah,
Money's a
yeah.
motivator.
It's like why I work, you know, a job waiting tables where you got to deal with the public and getting yelled at when you can stay home and write some tunes in your bedroom.
Oh, totally,
Sounds
dude.
way better. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, how did you deal with? Oh, one more thing I just remembered is for that first recording where we did drums, I actually didn't even have enough inputs to record all the drums.
Oh, no kidding.
So I was using the Line 6 UX2. So when they paid me the first half of the payment, I immediately went to the Guitar Center and I bought a new interface.
Oh, snap.
Like
Nice.
straight away, I bought an 8-input interface. It was like a Tascam. It's kind of sucks. It's noisy. It's not great.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was like, okay, 8 inputs. I was thinking through it. I was like, if you use the 2 toms, I can do this. I can like overheads, kick, snare, and 2 toms. Like, cool, I can do that, you know? And I ended up having to sit in the room with them. Like I didn't have cables long enough. So I'm like, I moved my computer out into the room and I'm like sitting next to the drum set with like headphones on and it's super loud. I can't monitor anything. I'm just like trying to make sure he's playing. Excuse me.
You're good.
Trying to make sure he's playing. 1 second. Oh, excuse me. Trying to make sure he's playing parts well. You know,
I got
that was
you.
really all I can monitor.
God, that's brutal, man. In the same
And make
room
sure
with
the
the
levels
drummer.
aren't clipping. Yeah, yeah. But I bought Steven Slate Trigger at the same time too, and I was like, okay, so this is all you need, right, to do live drums, right? So let's make this work.
We're doing it, man. Full send. Why not?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, okay. How did you handle deadlines for your first project? Did you have deadlines? How long did it take you to get the project done? Was there any, you know, was there any hold up with the artist? Were they getting annoyed at all? Like, just walk me through that process. How did that go for you?
Totally. And this is the same thing, like first client, first project.
Yeah.
So there weren't really any deadlines. And with a lot of people that I still record, you know, we want to get things done efficiently and keep momentum. But there's not like a ton of deadlines that end up coming up. But in this one in particular, like, you know, like with other projects, I feel like it can get a little too loose maybe.
Yeah.
Bailing like last minute, showing up super late, wanting to stay
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
late.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
project, like between bouncing from Audacity to him, you know, and I guess if we move forward, like we've done a bunch of music together since then. You know, bouncing from DAWs and just doing stuff and experimenting. It took a while to get like the full album done. Probably like
Yeah.
4 months, 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was kind of a
I can see
headache,
that.
you know.
Well, and
It's
mixing takes forever when you're new to it. It takes so
oh
long because
yeah.
you're constantly like, you're constantly just going back and forth between the car, and you're like, this doesn't sound great, and you
So
don't
many
really know
trips to
what
the
you're
car.
doing at that point. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, shit, man. I didn't even use additive EQ at all back then. I
No
only
kidding.
used subtractive. Yeah.
Oh
For the
man.
longest time, I refused to use additive EQ. I didn't start using it until a couple years ago.
What was the
I was just
reasoning?
always told, I was just always told don't do it. So
Interesting.
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why. And then now I use it all the time.
Totally.
It's funny how things change.
Yeah, yeah. Over time, man, I feel like I was doing the opposite, man. I was boosting mountains where I shouldn't have been, just absurd
Yeah.
curves.
Sure.
And I kind of tamed back a little bit. I do more reduction than I do additive now, unless it's like to taste. But especially
Yeah,
back then, I mean,
you kind of just know when you should do it now.
Yeah.
You get an idea of like, all right, now's a good time to boost, right? I
Totally.
want more sparkle on the top end. No amount of cutting is going to get me that. Let's fucking crank
Yep.
8K on an SSL or something
oh,
like that.
amazing. Totally. There's a time and
yeah.
a place for it every time, dude.
So deadlines were loose.
Deadlines were very loose.
Were there any revisions? Was that a headache? Did they like what you gave them? How was that?
I think we were just so like in the moment about it because looking back, the mixes were very bad. There was no editing. You know, they were thin. So many boosts. Like I'm saying, like everything was just ouch to the ears.
Yeah. I used to have bass drops. I didn't know how to monitor my subs correctly.
Yeah.
So when a bass drop would hit in, it would just go like,
Oh yeah,
just fucking like destroy the speaker, which I thought was kind of cool back then because I remember the one Sworn In EP had it like that.
Oh yeah, and some traders
and thinking
tracks
about it
where
again,
it's just like
yeah.
brown notes.
And thinking about it again, it's like, oh god, that was so amateur.
Rough,
That was
dude.
So bad.
Yeah, amateur. That's a good word for it, man.
Yeah.
As far as revisions went too, man, there weren't much for revisions on there. You know, I think we were so in the moment and like we did have that momentum when we were together, which sometimes was far and few between, like once a week, twice a week, maybe. And yeah, we just kept going, man. Of course, there were changes. I would make changes to things as needed. I'd listen to it like a couple days later and go, I'm going to do this thing here. I'm going to try this out, mess with this thing and send it to him, see what he thinks.
Yeah, I used to like doing that, giving people updates on where the mixes were at. And that's something that's changed about my process. I don't do that anymore. I like to get my full idea out before I show the client. Then they can do revisions off of that. I feel like when I showed it to them earlier, they would always have suggestions. And I'd be like, well, I haven't touched that yet. Like, but they would be really adamant about it. And it would kind of throw off my process, you know?
Absolutely. Especially when there's a lot of like, it could be like pretty crucial things, but I feel like a lot of the times when I sent off revisions, there's like a lot of I can't think of the word, man, like not redundant, but there's a word for it where it feels like the change really isn't going to make much of a difference. Either that or they continuously want something to be turned up more. And
yeah, well, that's always the classic, right? Is you get the revisions back and the guitarist says turn up the guitars, the drummer says turn up the drums.
Bring the kick drum up like 30 dBs by the time you're done.
The bassist says I can't hear the bass.
Yeah.
The vocalist, it's like, why am I so buried? Just that's so typical. I think it's personally I've learned it's best to just have the band collect their thoughts together and put them all together, because when the whole band's talking to each other and one person's like turn up the guitars, turn up the kick, turn up the drums, they'll realize like it's not really possible. They can't really all ask for that.
Totally.
Or else, if I turn everything up, it's all going to be more buried and it's going to be more squashed.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
How
For
about
me,
yours?
yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
yeah. For me, I think deadlines were pretty much the same way. I didn't have any clear deadline. I just said, I think I'll have it done around here. I would send them updates to the mix. They were really excited about it. Um, yeah, that's about it.
Easy
I wouldn't do the
peasy.
updates anymore. Yeah, I wouldn't do the updates anymore, but they seem to enjoy. They seem to enjoy just God, I can't think right now.
Just bits
Getting
of
the updates
progress, I
certainly.
suppose.
Hmm. Yeah, they seem to really enjoy the progress.
It is nice. I definitely. I don't remember if you did that on mine. I feel like you definitely did.
I definitely did, and I remember there was a couple times with yours where I would try different things and it would change the mix like dramatically. Like I had a habit of this is something I was really bad at back then, and I'm sure you can agree that we're still kind of bad at it now because just the way that we are as people is that it's hard to tell when a project's done,
Oh yeah,
and it's easy to keep tinkering.
totally.
And sometimes when you tinker, it makes things better, but sometimes when you tinker, it just keeps getting worse after a certain point. It's
Yeah,
like diminishing returns.
no mix is ever going to be perfect. I feel like when you get to a certain point, maybe with your reference track or that part, I feel like clicks. Be like, okay,
Yeah,
I'm good
absolutely.
here. Like this is good. Trust your gut in
Yeah.
that scenario. It's hard. I still do the same thing. Mess with songs for weeks sometimes. Not of
Oh yeah.
clients, mostly my own, but dude, it's just fun.
It can be until you go too far down the rabbit hole, and then it's like, then you're kind of like hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Then you're so far down the rabbit
Mhm.
hole that it just you can't tell what sounds good and what doesn't, and you're probably damaging the track.
Yeah.
It's good. Like I noticed that when I'm mixing something, usually within the first 2 to 3 hours is when I get the majority of the work done. Like that's
Totally.
most of the way there, right? Like it's not going to get much better than that. Everything after that is more just like stroking my ego. That's for me.
Yep.
After that point, the mix is pretty much there. You know,
It's close. I
um,
always like having like another
it's
day to
close.
kind of like let my
Yeah,
ears fully rest and then come back.
I like to take time. I like to take a couple
Hmm.
days off sometimes and just come back fresh because perspective is so easy to lose when you're spending
Oh,
hours in a
totally.
computer in a my room. I blocked off my windows so they wouldn't make as much sound. Right, like I'm in a windowless room, so it's so easy
Yeah.
just to get sucked in.
Yeah, and fatigued throughout that too. That's where I feel like a lot of the
Yeah,
willingness to continue comes from. But I also don't know that I'm like, let me reword that. Like I'll be fatigued, but I just want to continue making these things sound better. But while doing
yeah,
it, I'm like damaging it. So it's like a loop. You're like stuck in like a
yeah.
spiral where you're just not
Vicious
gonna get
cycle.
better till you're taking a break. You gotta
Yeah,
step away, come back, and then you'll say, okay, that's messed up. Or in some
yeah,
cases, I
yeah,
gotta restart the whole thing.
yeah. That's yeah. Um, let's see what else we got. I think we've touched on some of these. We kind of touched on scheduling. You were saying it was very loose back then, and I
Yeah,
remember it being the same way. It was just like, hey, our bassist can't make it today. Hey, we'll do it
totally.
next week, and it's like, all right, yeah,
And even now, it's kind of
um,
difficult too in some cases. You're trying to develop
yeah.
consistency.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you could always go down to the deposit route, right? But then with newer people, obviously, if somebody's serious, they'll put down a deposit, but that
Yes,
can also easily scare people away. It's it's hard to strike that balance between I'm a professional, I need to be paid, and seeming greedy, right?
totally.
It's hard to walk that line without scaring people away, especially musicians.
Hmm.
Like if they if they think you're too much of like a snaky business person, they're not going to trust you. And music is so emotional, you need them to be able to trust you.
Totally agree, man. Money can be something that really separates that. It can separate people in a lot of ways. I feel like in music, and especially working as like an engineer too. With this
Yeah.
guy's very hobbyist level, and that's totally okay. But he can't justify what the price is going to be, or and it
Hmm.
coming from my part too. I feel like it took some kind of messing around. Also, I feel like I'm definitely not
Yeah.
set with where I'm at. Uh,
Oh, I feel like you'll never be set. I feel like this shit's always going to change and evolve.
I
Like
get you.
same with the recording process, the billing process, and the scheduling process. It's like you're just going to learn things that work for you, things that
Totally.
don't. What works for other people might not work for you.
Yep.
I've had mentors who are very very business focused, and for me that just didn't do much. That wasn't me. I found that I'm actually better when I am a bit more casual in my approach. And, if I just make friends with people and, I, help them out, give them a couple pointers, or maybe like, maybe if we even just collab with each other, eventually that usually turns into a paying gig in some way.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to just like plant those seeds of those relationships. This is all about relationships.
100%, man.
Extremely personal. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't get a lot of online work. That's very rare for me. A majority of my work is word of mouth.
And that's amazing. That's like the best form of marketing, I suppose. Word of mouth marketing. It's one of the best forms of it.
It's reliable because you know that your clients are going to trust you. If you're really good friends with the band and then they send a band to you that they're really good friends with, well, you already have that connection, that mutual relationship. And there's just a lot of respect that goes into that. And
it's true.
I don't know. It's just nice. It's nice also, online, it's hard to put a face to the project that you're doing. Even if you're FaceTiming them or something, it's easy to feel very disconnected.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. There's a lot of ways that you can try and get that human sensation, but you're not quite there no matter what you're doing. And
yeah,
I don't know, back to relationships, in that scenario, I feel like that's just key. You could be an amazing producer and be a total butthole. No one's going to want to come back, I guess, unless like your price point is worth it dealing with you, I suppose. It's easier to be a good hang. And like you said, create friendships is like, it's a great feeling, and it's super important to do, good rapport for yourself and people to talk to and hang out with. You get comfortable with them. You can tell them we got to keep going. This isn't quite where we want it. And
yeah. It definitely gets less awkward coaching people the more you know them.
Totally.
With new people, you have to be very careful.
Yeah. A little bit on eggshells at first.
You can't be a little bit. Yeah. You got to explain why you feel away. But after you get used to somebody, you can just be like, look, man, if I hear you make a mistake, I'm just going to stop the take and we're just going to do it again.
Yep.
Is that going to bother you? And they're usually like, no. It's like, I'm just trying to save time. They're like, yeah, I agree.
Totally.
I hear them like, yeah, let's try that again. Start over. It's better than just like letting them run through like another 30 seconds when you know that something's real fucked up.
Oh, I used to do that all the time, dude. I was such an awkward person about that. I'd let them play like the whole thing before I'm like, okay, we're going to have to do that all over.
Bro, no.
Yeah,
God,
dude.
I had a client come in once who wanted to play the whole song. Like she couldn't understand or get the idea of like listening to a count in and then just like punching in, right? She just couldn't vibe with it. And that was the most painful session.
Oh, dude. Ouch.
That was so tough. It was like every time there was a mistake, it was like, let's start it from the top. I'm like, oh, fuck.
Dang. How
It took
frustrating.
so long to track those guitars. Yeah, that was
Wow.
so frustrating.
It's like that sometimes, dude. Even if it's like something that's like not even noticeable. I've had sessions that just draw out for like 3 or 4 hours longer than they should just because the vibe of it isn't right.
Yeah.
But the in my ears, because I don't know a lot of the music that comes in. For my first time hearing it's when they get here, so I don't really know, I guess, the articulation of the vibe. But the recording will be there, and the performance in my ears is like on fleek. It's there, but they'll want to get rid of it and start over. And I'm like, man, I don't hear where that's at, but I suppose so. We'll go until you feel good about it, because that's what's important.
Oh, I have clients say that to me. Where they'll hear something and I'm just like, it doesn't matter.
Totally.
Like, you know what I mean? Like they'll be like, it sounds like my pick scraped the string there, and I'll listen. I'll be like, I literally can't hear that.
Yeah.
And I'm the one who's anal. My clients are always telling me, like, you just hear every detail, and it's like, well, so when they hear something that I don't, it's like, really? Like I feel like they get too stuck in the minutia and they're not worried about the big picture.
Oh, dude,
100%. For me, it's more big picture. Yeah. I mean, details matter, but it's easy to get lost in the sauce for especially when you're the one playing it, I suppose. I mean, when I'm tracking guitars, I'm such a perfectionist.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a great quality.
I've gotten better at that to where I don't really edit my own playing that much anymore because one, I feel like, I'm a good player. I don't really need that. But the other thing is, like, when you edit things too tightly, you kind of lose the energy and the stereo width that you get from something that's, more natural. When when both things are like straight on the grid, your stereo width kind of just like goes, just gets a little tinier.
Yeah.
It's not quite,
it's not as alive feeling. I've noticed the same thing. 'Cause, when I first
Yeah.
I cut my hand real bad as a butcher, and I started slowing my recordings way down, and the recordings were great, and they'd be like perfect, but I would also follow and
Yeah.
edit that DI to be like
Yeah.
totally
Yep.
perfect, and it like
I used to do
it was
that
very flat.
every time.
Flat was the only thing I could think of to like describe those
Hmm.
songs. But then when I would like play through it naturally, say even at that slow tempo still, and not edit it and speed it back up, that kind of compensated for those small hiccups, made them a little more timely, and it felt totally way more natural, super natural to
Yeah,
play.
that's like sacrilege to me, but you know, this is different
Yeah,
approaches to me. I'm like, I would never record something slower. Now, granted, I've recorded stuff and then I decided, okay, I want this part to be slightly faster or I want
yeah,
this part to be slightly slower. And sometimes I'll just speed it up, slow it down,
yeah,
and it sounds fine, so I don't fuck with it. Like within a certain, amount, stretching audio is not a big deal, right?
totally.
Because to me, it's like, well, the part's already played well, the feel's there. I don't want to re-record this. I want to fucking move on. I
Yep.
want to keep the energy going. That's the other thing that's super important is I feel like the flow state is super important. And once you break that, it's very hard to keep going,
It really is,
especially
man.
with especially with writing. Writing especially. That's the toughest thing
Yeah.
to keep your flow state going with.
I've found close to nothing that really gets me back into that other than just
Yep.
going and trying to do something, because sometimes
Yep.
that flow state and I know it doesn't, but it can feel like it lasts days, sometimes like a
Oh, it
whole
can,
week,
yeah.
and
It's great when it does, when you're just on the fucking ball and you
yeah,
have like the most productive week. And then, you know, it's easy to lose perspective with that, right? Perspective is everything. We've been talking about it a lot.
yeah, it really
It's
is.
easy to lose perspective with that because, if you do, then you have kind of an off week the next week where you only are on a couple of days or maybe not at all. It's like, it feels like total shit.
Yep.
And then you get this sinking feeling of like falling off the wagon and never being able to
Yeah.
get it
Yeah,
back. And
exactly it, dude.
it's so difficult.
Yeah.
So
And
difficult.
it just feels so
Um,
lame. It literally feels like your fuse is burnt out. Like you got
Oh,
everything
dude,
you
yeah.
could out. And then for like, if you don't get yourself up to do the thing, you're not going to get the thing.
Yeah, I've dealt with that a lot in the last 2 years. I think most of us have during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think a lot of creatives, like, we're not getting to experience as many things in life, so it's harder and harder to find inspiration.
It really is, man.
Yeah, as much as I like sitting down and making music. It's nice to have a life too.
Yeah, actually go out and not like be like low key afraid of all kinds of things. Going out into public or touching this door handle or like using the bathroom. I think about those like little things like, well, by being out, I'm probably just going to get sick. I'm going to get the vid.
Yeah.
Thank God I haven't
Yeah.
yet, but it's like underlying nerves.
I have once, possibly twice. So
Rough,
it's very
dude,
fun.
rough.
But anyway, let's not talk about such bummers like that.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
keep it on topic.
Sure.
We're pretty much done and we're starting to approach 45 minutes. So why don't we maybe cover one or two more bullet points and then wrap it up?
Totally. Over
What
promising.
about your over promising? Yeah, okay, that works. That's good. Have you screwed yourself by talking yourself up too much before?
Totally. I totally have. Only a couple of
Yeah.
times because then I felt dirty. I would think I'm head
Yep.
honcho like Mr. Badass because I can do this, that, or the other. And I really couldn't looking back. Like I thought I knew how
Yeah.
to use a compressor, but I don't know what I was doing.
Oh, yeah.
Eh.
Man, I feel like I didn't even figure out compression until like 2-3 years ago.
No kidding. Me
It
too,
took so,
dude.
It took so fucking long, man.
Yeah.
God.
It was
when
weird. It's a
When
learning.
glue finally started to click, I was like, how the fuck have I made it this far
Yeah.
without really getting this?
Yeah, exactly. Well, no wonder my mixes were all over the place, dude, and even
Oh,
EQ to
God,
some
yeah.
degree.
Yeah. Oh, EQ's always changing, man. You're always going to get better at that. Same with
Totally.
compression. It's an art form.
Yeah, it's
an art
ever
form.
growing,
You're
dude.
always gonna. Yeah.
It's like the best part of it. But yeah, dude,
Yeah,
I would.
I agree. The best and
say
worst
that-
part. It makes it frustrating, but it also makes it highly engaging.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Back to perspective. If you have the right perspective for that, it's definitely useful, and it's very easy sometimes to get into that flow state, knowing that you're probably going to learn something. I love the acquisition of knowledge. So like when I do hear these things or like do this thing, and I'm like, wow, that sounds great. That like gets me excited, and that makes me want to keep going.
That's one of the best parts about talking to other people who do audio. It's so rare to find somebody who is on the same wavelength as you are, especially now, like I'm about to turn 27. You're what, 25, 26?
Yep. 26 this year.
Yeah. So we're getting to the point now where the people who are hobbyists in music, a lot of people are falling off of it. And
Yeah.
it's now it's like, oh, I guess we're lifers now.
Yep.
We're
Totally.
we're just guys who are always going to do this. So it gets rarer and rarer to find people who know what you're talking about. So that's why when we have relationships like yours and mine, or me and my friend Ingvar, and a couple of other things, when you have stuff like that, the conversations can just go on forever because there's just so many things you have pent up.
Oh,
you can
yeah,
talk
dude.
you can talk about tape for like 30 minutes. Just be
Yeah.
like, I love tape on this application. You're like, I use tape like this. And I'm like, I didn't fucking think of that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's the best, dude. I love that.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
hearing
Yeah.
things, even if I'm not even familiar with like this thing. Like I don't remember what you told. It was the automating on your master different compressors. Like that like
Yeah.
blows my mind. That's like really crazy to
Yeah.
think about.
That's something I just learned. Fuck it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Putting a new bus compressor in, verse and chorus with a different bus compressor.
Totally.
Like, fuck. That's awesome.
And
It sounds great.
Yeah, dude. It's fun. And not to mention, you told me that probably like 6 hours deep into a conversation we've been having about audio all night anyways. It's easy to get lost.
Yeah, well, I think it's like with this conversation, we've gone off on plenty of tangents.
Totally.
I think, and we're trying to keep it. I mean, it's just gonna happen.
Yep.
Music is so exciting. There's so many details and facets to talk about.
Totally. So true.
So when you overpromised, what happened there? What were you saying to the guy, and then how did they receive it when you delivered it?
Okay, so I would listen to bands. The bands that inspired me are kind of like the mixes that I was going for and like the music I would write at the time. And
Yeah.
I would send him these bands and say, I'm going to get you to sound like this, like Neck Deep,
Oh,
for example, was one of them, or like Knuckle
I've
Puff.
done that.
And this was a guy in high school. It was
Fuck.
like a really like cliche pop punk band. And it was live drums, bass, guitar, and singer. And we recorded, we got everything done. And I could just see like looking back and kind of at the time, because it was a little awkward because I kind of realized like this isn't sounding anything like I thought it would because I'd never done live drums really.
Yeah, that's a hard transition, man. That's so tough.
And even the samples I had too, they were only FL Studio samples, so it's like one voicing. Like it was just as bad.
Yep.
It would sound just as demo. But I was like, oh my gosh, dude, like this is sounding bad. I know he knew that it was sounding bad. Like I got the bar set way too high for myself here. So we just did it really quickly and I gave it to him, and that album didn't get released. They didn't want to have their like anything to do with that. But granted,
my
I mean,
God,
where else were they gonna go? The other studio in town was expensive. We were like 16. And they ended up becoming like they're really good. They used to play with like Mom Jeans and Joyce Manor down in Chico,
that's
California.
Great bands, yeah.
Yeah. Way set the bar way too high. Totally.
I did a similar thing. I did a similar thing when I was in like my second year of college or third year of college maybe or something like that. I was starting my major. And I remember I got approached by a band that was on a smaller label, but a recognizable label. And I'm not going to name this band because I don't think they like me.
Oh, snap.
But, well, when you're young, you burn bridges sometimes, man.
Yeah.
This was 7 years ago now or something.
Man.
I'm sure there's not really any animosity left there, but
Shit, I hope not, man.
didn't feel good at the time. And I remember recording them, and I overpromised them so much. I was like showing them mixes from Will Putney, showing them like Knocked Loose. I'm like, I'm gonna make it sound like this, like just like this is what I'm going for. I just shouldn't have done that. I'll be like, yeah, here's my stuff. You guys want to work together?
Yep.
Cool. What references do you want me to use? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's all super important, but. Yeah, I overpromised so much. The first mix they were not good on. They asked me if I could do another mix, so I completely from the ground up did a second mix.
Oh my gosh, brutal.
I was getting paid. I got paid nothing for the hourly at the studio because they didn't have a lot of money. So when they were coming into the studio, I was working at Apollo Music Production back then. They were coming into the studio and paying like $20 an hour, and I wasn't taking any wage, or they were paying like $30 an hour or something like that.
Oh my
And they paid me like
goodness.
$100 just for the mix. So I did two mixes only off of that $100 payment, and they weren't really happy with it. They're like, we might not release this. Should we re-record guitars? Just so much.
Yeah.
And
Starting to dissect
they ended up coming
it.
to me for a second. They ended up coming to me for a second song, and the second song went way better. Like
Good.
the guitars sounded beefy, the drums were sounding better. And something that was interesting with this band, and I think this was label pressure, right? Something that I hadn't dealt with before, and I really haven't dealt with since, is I would send the mix off to them. They would love it. And then they would send it off to their label, and their label would hate it.
No
And then,
kidding.
so I would be in the studio with them and I'd be like, do you like what I'm doing here? They're like, yeah, this is great. And then I would get notes from them the next day about how bad it was.
Oh no, that's
Yeah,
defeating.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And
did they
I
say like
remember,
what was the problem with it?
yeah, there's just a bunch of shit. I mean, there was tons of problems with the mix. I look back at it. It was great at the time for me.
Yeah.
But they're coming to me. They've heard my previous mixes and they're like, we want to sound like that. And to be honest, I think I got them sounding better than that, and they still didn't like it. So it's like,
Wow.
well, I did the best I could.
You just can't please
Right?
some people, man.
You can't. You really can't. I don't think they enjoyed. But there were so many issues with that. They came in, they wanted to do an album with me, but they wanted to come in and write in the studio, even though they didn't have a big budget. So they were on hourly, but they wanted to write on the clock.
Oh boy.
And they were doing the drums. They were doing the drums like, they were doing everything same day. They would come in, write the song, record the entire song.
Oh my goodness.
And
That's
so
packed.
so the drums and guitars were never done, like nothing was consistent between the songs. So there's no way that's all going to sound like it belongs on an album.
Yeah.
Right. It sounds like super eclectic. So
Oh no.
it was the biggest fucking mess. It was
It
such a
sounds
mess.
like it.
And I remembered, and I don't think this is true, but I remembered the vocalist said something to me like, we showed the mix to Will Putney and he said it's not good. And that's when I knew my bullshit detector was going off. I'm like, these
Yeah.
guys aren't fucking connected to Will Putney. Like, come the fuck
No,
on. He doesn't work
dude.
with bands on that label.
I feel like
Yeah.
you would say
Well-
more
well,
than
they
it's
started
bullshit.
the conversation by saying like, who's that producer that you liked? So I was like, Will Putney. And then they were like, yeah, we showed it to him and he said it was bad. It's like-
Whatever, dude. You wish.
so that bridge got burnt. We argued.
Yeah.
Nothing got resolved there. They were like, we'll tell our label never to work with you again. Just shit like that. Like,
Wow.
and I was
Sticklers.
like,
Holy
go fuck.
crap.
I was like, go fuck yourself. I was so angry. I was a kid. And,
Yeah. Naturally, dude. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, but I learned something there, which is not only did I overpromise, but I also underpaid myself.
Yeah.
And but by underpaying myself, I felt like I was constantly getting screwed over.
Yeah.
So every time something was wrong and they wanted me to do more work for free, it felt like, it hurt. It hurt
It
more like a
does.
personal attack, And then when I didn't have that set up, once you get your payment set up properly, somebody asks you to do more work and you're getting paid for it. You're like, okay,
Totally.
I'll do a revision. Sure.
It's already
Even if you're not taking money for that revision, right? Even if you've just gotten paid a good amount for the project, you're like,
Yes.
fuck it, I'll put 30 minutes into it. I'll fix it.
totally.
But this is another topic for another day. Clients who pay more tend to have less complaints, I've noticed.
Yeah, isn't that
They pay
weird,
more,
dude? How that scale
They
grows.
pay more. Yeah, they pay more. Because you're getting paid properly, you give them a good product, you put a lot of effort into it, and then they're happy. But when you get paid not a lot, you don't put as much effort in, the client listens to it, they're a little pissed off. So
And I don't understand
Those
why,
projects-
man. It's because it's the same.
those projects are not worth it.
What's that?
They're not. Those projects are not worth it.
No,
They're
dude.
absolutely not worth it. Yeah. And let this be a lesson to anybody listening: do not burn bridges. Horrible idea. It feels really good to tell people go fuck yourself. It doesn't feel good when
You get that rad
when
rapport.
they stop coming to you.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
And I might have lost out on potential work through that label.
Totally.
Had I just now. Should I have handled that entire situation different? Yeah, and I don't think those guys were going to pay me anymore for me to try another mix again or anything like that. I think they were kind of at the end of their rope. They hadn't actually paid that much money to me at that point. I think they had paid like $300, and it was like we were like 2 songs in.
Oh my goodness.
But-
150's cheap, man.
Yeah, but they were cheap. They didn't have a good budget. I wasn't getting paid anything, and they were asking the fucking world of me. And
Yeah, that is pure stress.
I would say I didn't handle that situation properly, and they didn't handle that situation properly.
It usually goes both
you know,
ways.
Maybe if I put up with it, maybe some of the music would have gotten released, and maybe I would have gotten more work through them. Or maybe, I would have just dealt with more bullshit and gone even crazier. So
Yep.
who knows? I try not to be too burnt about it nowadays, but I remember listening to, I think it was a URM podcast where A.L. Levy, I think. I don't
Something
know.
like that. Yeah,
He
yeah.
he was saying a similar thing where he told, a band was like 6 months behind on payment, or their label was 6 months behind on payment. He said, fuck you guys. And he's like, that felt good at the time, but that label never worked with me again.
No
It's like,
kidding.
well, yeah. So, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Dealing with the bullshit.
It's hard, man. Working with people, you know,
very
you already
hard.
have the dynamic that this is your job, or like the emotions that this is what you're doing as a job. And then you
Yeah.
have these kinds of scenarios that come up that really like they test your willingness and test your wants and, you know, standing your own ground on so many different levels, not just payment wise, that it, you know,
Yeah.
it can kind of get to that point, especially when you're younger. It'd be super easy to pop off on somebody.
Yeah.
But like you said,
Oh
those are
yeah.
lessons, man. You reflect on those
And
currently and just make better.
I was such an angry kid.
Oh,
I was
dude.
so angry.
Oh yeah. What
I mean,
teenager
we're all
wasn't,
playing
especially
heavy
in like
music.
a
We're-
deathcore scene.
We're all playing heavy music. You know,
Yeah.
we're playing music that people punch each other to.
Yeah.
It's there's obviously some emotional issues there.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, energy,
so-
dude, and angst. It's all there.
Yeah.
It's all in one
Well,
big
and you know
jar.
what? I had a friend tell me who used to play in a band with this guy, and he said, I wouldn't work with those guys. That guy is, you know, he's a little sketch or a little manipulative or something like that. He told me. And I was just like, well, it's a good opportunity. I'm going to try it. And you
Yeah.
know what? I should have fucking listened. I probably just should have
Totally.
listened. I should have listened to my people who were longtime clients, who were very loyal to me, who were very good friends with me. I just didn't listen to them. So lots of things went wrong, and oh well, shit happens.
You live and learn, man. It's all an experience. You know.
It always hurts when you don't live up to the client's expectations, when things don't work out, and it happens less. But I've had it happen once in the last year. You know.
Yeah.
I did mixes, and I think we touched on this earlier about revisions, right? Like the entire band was giving me their revisions separately. So they're all saying
brutal.
different things and pushing me in different directions. You know, I'm trying things.
Yeah.
They're like, one person's like, I love this. The other person's like, I don't like this. And after like 6 or 7 rounds of revisions, I'm just like, guys, like, I'm not getting paid for this. Like this is too much.
Got to
Like,
draw that line.
you know, this is it. I'll do one more revision and then I'm done, you know?
Yeah.
And it sucks. I really liked that band, but they're just so hard to work with.
Totally.
Excellent band. I hope they do really well, but fuck me. that was rough. Man.
Total headache,
It was
man.
really, really rough. Yeah.
And you still
Yeah,
want
and
to
it-
stay like efficient, profit
Yeah.
wise. You know, time is money, and you don't want to be burning that consistently.
Yeah. Well, and they were even like, we feel like we should, we're thinking about paying you out for the rest of the project and going somewhere else.
No kidding.
And I was just like, you know what, guys, I like you. I like you as people. I like your band. I want you to be successful. You're talented people. You're nice people.
Yeah.
Just don't worry about it. I'll take the loss, you know, whatever. Just, I'd rather you use the money to go towards a new recording.
Totally.
And so that's one way to save face, right?
Yes.
I handled it better than I did when I was younger with the label band, right? I handled that very poorly
Yeah.
in comparison. Instead of just cutting my losses, I dealt with this one and just very poorly.
I've had similar
I dealt with this one-
situations though.
I dealt with this one better. Yeah, I did better. It hurt, and it's never fun
Yeah.
not pleasing people.
Totally.
'Cause we're in a people-pleasing business.
Yeah. You know, something like back to it, man. You can't satisfy everybody, and you'll go crazy trying to. You know,
Yeah.
you can kind of feel that. I feel the piles of things that stack up to give me that like conclusion sooner than later. There'll just start being
Yeah.
some things that I'm just like, I'm kind of, or at the time I should say, I was far away from those ways of doing things, so I couldn't deliver something. But they insisted on
Yeah.
paying me out for the project. It was like 3 songs, and then they just went somewhere else. I was
Yeah,
like, hey,
hurts, man.
you know, I almost would rather not had the payout and given them something good,
Yeah.
but I like didn't know what was
Yeah.
going on.
At
Totally.
that point, like money is, after you have a certain amount of money, you're comfortable enough, right?
Yeah.
Like, so when I was younger, $100 was a really big deal, but now it's like $100. I feel like I look at it almost like $20. Like
yeah.
if I lose out on $100, it's like, this sucks, but like I'm not gonna cry over it. I'll be okay.
No,
I'll
it's
survive.
really not much money.
It's not worth burning bridges over small amounts of money
No.
anymore.
No, it's really not.
I'd rather save face and have a good relationship with the people. Like with that band last year where it didn't work out, I did something for them the previous year that did, and they loved it.
Yeah.
So like, I still want to be able to say, hey, I did this for this band. You know, I don't want to burn that bridge. You know,
Yep.
if people ask them, hey, who did that demo? They can be like, you know, this guy did that demo, and then they might say, yeah, he tried to work for us again, it didn't work, but like, whatever, my name's attached to it, which is nice, and they're not going to have bad things to say about me personally, which is cool too. It's nice knowing it's just business.
Yeah, and you're still in the green there. There's nothing like directly negatively impacting you.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right. Do we have anything else to talk about? We are an hour in.
I'm feeling pretty good, man.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
covered a lot, blabbered a
I
lot.
think, yeah, we did. I think that's pretty much good. I mean, we didn't really go over your process then versus now, but I think we're just going to cut it here and we can revisit that topic at some other point, maybe in best practices when we
Totally.
hit that up. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Once again, my name's Seamus,
Andrew, appreciate
and
you guys.
this podcast does not have a title yet. But hopefully people will start joining in and saying hi. And maybe we can have some guests on at some point. That'd be
That'd
very
be
fun.
awesome, man. Some of the local talent.
So, yeah, there's a lot of talented local people that would be very cool to get in the room.
Absolutely.
So, we're going to be doing this every Wednesday, and I'm not sure when the video comes out. Maybe we'll be able to put it out Thursday or Friday, but so we'll figure out the schedule for this pretty soon. And thanks so much, guys.
Peace.